Welcome to Walks on the Wild Side. I'm Scott Walker, and in this video we're going to capture the beautiful colours of autumn through macro and close-up photography. And the subject that I've chosen are mushrooms. Now, I've come down to this wonderful woodland behind me because woods are a great place to look for mushrooms. There's a kind of codependency that exists between mushrooms and trees, and you'll often find mushrooms that grow near the roots of trees, and that's because the mushrooms will help the trees find the nutrients that they want, and in return the trees will give the mushrooms some of their sugars to help the mushrooms grow. So woods are a fantastic place for this type of photography. So I'm really looking forward to it, and let's go. So I found a mushroom here that's growing out of a fallen tree trunk. The mushroom's just here, the trunk's lying along the ground. So let's give you a couple of tips to start with. So firstly, make sure you wear some clothes that you don't mind getting dirty, because you're probably going to spend a lot of the time on or near the ground. The next thing is, when you're focusing on a mushroom, you want to make sure that you are focused on the leading edge of the mushroom. So I always recommend when you're doing macro to manually focus, but even if you're using autofocus, make sure that your focusing point is on that leading edge of the mushroom. It looks a little odd, not just for mushrooms, flowers, anything like that, if the focusing point is somewhere around the edge or towards the back of the mushroom, because the viewer's eye will always be led towards the thing that's nearest to them first. So they want to see that bit in focus, and then as their eye moves away towards the back of the mushroom, it doesn't matter that that is defocused. So the leading edge is the place to think about. And the next thing, when it comes to getting your exposure right, don't worry too much about the shadows. You don't want the shadows to be crushed, but if your photo is slightly underexposed, it's okay, because it's easier to deal with raising some of those shadows in post-processing than it is to deal with really bright highlights. And there's quite a lot of contrast in woodland photography. And also, it actually helps you lose some of the detail that you don't want to see, some of the dark stuff that's on the ground of the woodland floor. So leaving your shadows to be a little darker than usual is perfectly okay. So let's frame this up and take the shot. So for the next tip, I'm going to suggest that you think like a studio photographer and dress the scene. So here I've got a classic toadstool, the fly agaric, and this is the kind of toadstool that you'll find drawn by any kid if you ask them to draw a picture of a mushroom. It's also the kind of toadstool that if you played a lot of Super Mario Brothers like I did when I was little, you'll have spent hours collecting these things. This looks like a great specimen. There's loads of white spots on it, it's not got any chunks missing, it's pretty perfect, but the scene around it isn't perfect. We've got a couple of branches, there's some mud on it, there's nothing really interesting around it, although there are some nice colours from these leaves. So we're going to dress the scene, and I found a few things within about 50 metres of here that I'm going to use. We've got some yellowing ferns, we've got a sprig of pine needles, and we've got the shell of a chestnut. Now, this is a little bit controversial for some people because some photographers think you should only photograph things exactly as you find them. I don't, but I'm not far off that, and I'm not here to lecture anybody about the morals of what you should or shouldn't do. I just tell you what my beliefs are. I don't think you should do anything that damages anything in the environment or risks a food source of an animal. And whilst these particular mushrooms are poisonous to humans, they're not to some other mammals. Squirrels could eat these. So I would never pick it. I would also not generally snap things off trees, apart from leaves that are at the end of their life anyway. If they're yellowing or orange, they're about to fall off. The tree can't use them to photosynthesize, so you might as well take them. But other than that, I don't think you should be using anything that is too far away from your subject. So I wouldn't pick up a mushroom and transplant it to a beach, for example. That would be incongruous. But I don't have a problem with just making the scene a little bit neater so that you get a nicer picture. So let's have a look at how I'm going to dress this scene. So first I'm going to remove this branch and I'm going to move this one. Now we've got another mushroom here that's fallen over, it's died, it's gone mouldy. So I don't want that in the picture, but I also don't want to remove it because it's going to have roots that go down and it could grow back next year. So all I'm going to do is cover it up so we don't see it. That's out of the way, don't need to worry about it. Let's remove a few more twigs. And now we need to think about cleaning up the toadstool. So I'm going to just brush out the way some of these pine needles. So they're not covering it. Now I'm going to move this nettle out the way and I'm going to pin that down over here with one of those branches that I moved. Next, I'm going to use some of these fallen pine needles, which act like a brilliant brush, and I'm just going to brush off lightly some of the mud that's on the surface of this toadstool. What I don't want to do is to knock off any of the white bits, because they're the spores that will help the toadstool to spread and grow elsewhere. So now I'm going to remove a few of the green leaves because I don't want too many of those in the picture. So next I'm going to put in some of my yellowing ferns and I'm going to photograph the mushroom from here. So I just want a few of these in the background to add a little bit of colour. So that's all right. So if I'm here, they'll be to one side. I've got that sprig of dead pine needles, which I'm just going to lay on top of the ferns. I might drag those ferns a little closer. Just pop that there. And then just for a touch of alternative colour in the background, I don't think this will be in focus, but let's pop that chestnut shell. Okay, let's see what that looks like. So now I'm looking at the scene, and what I can see, I don't like, there's a few of these pine needles which are just poking up a little too high. So I'm going to just get rid of some of those around the side of the toadstool, pull those away, and that exposes the stalk of the toadstool a little bit. Okay, so now where I've positioned the pine needles, they're not particularly showing up in the picture, so I'm just going to turn them around and put the tips of them close to the mushroom. Yeah, that's looking good, but I'm not getting an awful lot of colour from that nice green chestnut. Ow, it's very sharp. So I'm just going to pull that a little bit nearer and make sure that the colour's not overlapping with the mushroom. Nice. Now, I'm framing it up, and there's actually another mushroom in the background, which is just giving a nice touch of red. So we've got the orange through to the pine needles, the yellow of the ferns, the green, and then some red in the background. So there's a lovely little variation of autumn colours here. And now I just want to make sure that none of those colours overlap. So I'm checking all the points around the picture. Let's move those pine needles a little bit. That's nice. Make sure there's some distance before the toadstool and some clear light between the toadstool and the one at the back. Focusing on the very front of the toadstool to make sure that that's in focus. There we go. So something that may really help you with macro photography is to get some fixed supplementary lighting. Now, I'm a big fan of using flash in macro photography, but that's usually to frame the action if I'm photographing an insect that's moving about or a flower that's moving in the wind. And with this, it's perfectly still. You don't get any movement in mushrooms. So you don't need to use a flash. So I tend to like to use my LED lighting panel. Now, I've had this for years and it works perfectly well, but you can get much smaller units nowadays fairly cheaply. But the important thing is you want to have something ideally that lets you change the intensity of the light. So I can increase it or decrease it. And it's also got a 2/8 screw on the cold shoe, so I can mount it to the top of my camera, or more usually, I can attach it to my Joby GorillaPod and position it where I want it around the scene. So let's get to taking this little cluster of mushrooms. So here's what I'm going to do. So firstly, I'm going to frame up the shot how I want it. And I've scattered a few yellow leaves here just to give a little bit more of that autumn colour to this scene. So I'm focusing on the very front smallish mushroom here, and I've got the position of it and the composition roughly where I want. So next, let's get the exposure. So I'm going to turn on my LED light panel and just turn it up till I roughly get the kind of exposure that I want. Now let's choose an aperture. So I'm at f13 and actually that looks quite good. So there is some blur as you move out of the scene, but the front mushroom should be in focus. So next I'm going to, in fact, let me just pump that up a little bit more. There we go. So next I am going to focus manually on that front mushroom. So I'm going to turn on my focus zooming. That lets me zoom into that front mushroom, and I'll just get the exposure, get the focus close enough. And now I'm going to zoom further in. So at the minute I'm at 4.7 times, and now I go to 9.4 times, and I can see all the tiny details on the front of this mushroom. So I'm happy that that focus is correct. Now let's just double check the exposure. It's slightly underexposed, maybe one stop, but there are some quite bright spots on those mushrooms which I don't want. So I'm going to move the light back slightly further. And that's because light drops off the further away from the subject it is. So it will get slightly darker. And I'm now broadly happy with that. Just going to check the focus zoom again. Yeah, it's still where I want it to be. And let's take that shot. Now here's something that you could do if you've got some mobility issues and you can't get down to the ground. A lot of trees have mushrooms that grow on them, and this one has got a real variety of sizes. We've got one up here that is about the size of a 5p piece. We've got one here that's probably about the size of a £2 coin. Got one here that's about the size of a mug, and there's one down low that's probably about the size of a side plate. So you can really do a variety of things with these. You can go for a narrower aperture and shoot directly past them, get some of the woodland in the background. That's really nice. If you've got some nice colours on the ground, you could go for a really wide aperture, so a low f-stop, shoot down over them and pick up the beautiful colours on the ground. Or you could shoot up through them into the canopy of the trees and pick up the colours that are up above. Now, I'm not going to photograph these ones here. Although I found a nice collection of them, the colours in this part of the wood are still really green, and I want to go and try and find somewhere where I can get some of these that have got some more yellows and oranges. Okay, so here I found some other specimens that are in a much better place with some beautiful colours. I can shoot down to the ground and up into the canopy of trees, but it is a little bit dark, so I'm using the LED light panel again just to give it that little bit of a boost. So I've come to one of my favourite areas of this woodland, and this is where I do a lot of my woodland photography. So I'm going to invite you now to think about this exercise as a landscape or woodland photographer might. And you might find it better for this type of shot to switch from your macro lens to a wide angle lens. You could use your macro lens, but you will get more of the scene in with a wide angle. So I've switched to my 17 to 28mm. And I'm going to get down on the floor, photograph the mushroom close up, but with a wide angle lens to capture as much of this woodland scenery in the background as I can. I've been doing my macro photography all day long in this wonderful woodland, and it's one of my favourite woods. Woods are great places to do all sorts of photography, but particularly macro at this time of year. It gives you all those wonderful colours that you want to show off. But woodlands can also be really difficult places because of the high contrasts, the shadows that are cast by the trees and the canopy of leaves, through to the bright sunlight poking through them. And so if you're interested in finding out a little bit more about how I deal with high contrasts in the woods, you might like to take another walk on the wild side with this video. So thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.